In the golden sun-soaked lands of Canaan, where the rugged hills rolled like sleeping giants under the cloudless sky, and the soil cracked beneath every step, there lived a young Egyptian maid named Hagar. Her name meant flight, and perhaps it was a whisper of the future, for her life would be marked by journeys of body, spirit, and soul. She was not born in this land, nor into the household of the Hebrew patriarch Abraham, but had been brought there in a transaction long forgotten by those who arranged it. To Sarah, the aging and dignified wife of Abraham, Hagar was a servant, a helper, a body to be commanded. Yet to herself, Hagar was more. She was a girl with memories of the Nile, of songs sung by her mother under moonlight, of stories told by fireside women whose wisdom shaped her thoughts. She was more than her status. She knew it even if no one else did. The household of Abraham was not like any other. He was a man who claimed communion with an unseen God, who often withdrew to places of stillness to pray, who spoke of promises and blessings not yet fulfilled. Hagar listened, she watched, and she learned. Sarah, the matriarch, was elegant and formidable. But beneath her regal bearing was an ocean of sorrow. Her womb, once hopeful and open, had become a tomb of silence. Each passing year was a thief, robbing her of the hope of children. In a culture where motherhood was a woman's crown, Sarah bore a sense of disgrace. She kept her chin high, her eyes dry, but Hagar saw the clenched hands, the moments of stillness where grief overtook her. Then one evening, Sarah called Hagar into the tent. Her eyes, dark as onyx, burned with unshed tears and a determination forged in pain. "Hagar," she said, her voice low but steady, "you know I have borne no child to my husband. I have waited, I have hoped, but the Lord has restrained me. Now listen, go to Abraham. Be his wife, bear him a child. Perhaps I shall obtain children by you." Hagar stood frozen. This was not a request, this was a command masked in sorrow. She nodded slowly, heart pounding. No one asked Hagar what she wanted. She had no voice to give consent or refusal. She was a servant, her body offered as a vessel of borrowed hope. Abraham, reluctant but obedient, did as Sarah asked, and Hagar, caught between obedience and anguish, found herself thrust into a new, strange role. When she conceived, a strange power awakened in her. She, a servant, carried what Sarah could not. Her belly swelled with new life, but so too did her pride. She looked at Sarah with something akin to pity, and Sarah felt it like a blade. Tension thickened the air in the household. Sarah's bitterness grew sharp, and Hagar's pride became bold. The mistress blamed the servant looked down on the mistress. Abraham, weary of the storm between the two women, turned away. "Do with her as you please," he said to Sarah, and walked away. What followed was cruelty. Sarah's grief became wrath, and she dealt harshly with Hagar, tasks that broke her back, words that cut deeper than any whip. Hagar, young and alone, with child and without comfort, could bear it no longer. She fled. The wilderness greeted her with silence and scorching heat. Her sandals wore thin against the jagged stones of the road to Shur. Her water skin was nearly empty. Each step was a labor, driven by a pain that stretched beyond her body, pain of rejection, of being used, of being invisible. What was she to anyone but a tool? Who was she when no one called her by name? She collapsed by a spring of water, her strength gone, her heart raw, her tears mixed with the dust. And then a figure appeared, radiant and impossible. The angel of the Lord stood before her. "Hagar, servant of Sarah," he said. His voice was like water to her parched soul. "Where have you come from, and where are you going?" She looked up, startled. He knew her name. "I am fleeing from my mistress Sarah," she answered, voice trembling. The angel nodded. "Return to your mistress and submit to her." She stiffened, wounded again. "Return? To what?" But he continued, "I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. Behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen." The words sank deep, not as burden, but as balm. The Lord had heard, the Lord had seen. For the first time, someone eternal and divine, recognized her pain. She whispered, almost in disbelief, "You are the God who sees me." And she named the spring, Bir Lahai Roi. the well of the living one who sees me. She returned. The journey back to Sarah's tent was not easier, but it was different. Now, she walked with a secret strength. She carried not only a child, but a promise, a name given by heaven itself, Ishmael. Time passed, and in due season, the child was born. Abraham named him Ishmael, as the angel instructed. Though he was not the son of promise for Abraham, he was a promise fulfilled for Hagar. A child born of affliction, but not defined by it. Hagar raised him under Sarah's wary eyes and Abraham's distant affection. The boy grew strong, full of fire and life, wild as the winds of the desert. He laughed loud, ran far, and asked questions no one else dared. But the peace was temporary. When Sarah finally bore a son of her own, Isaac, the balance shifted. She saw Ishmael not as a brother to her child, but as a threat. Her heart, once broken by barrenness, now burned with a mother's fierce jealousy. "Cast out this slave woman with her son," Sarah demanded, "for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac." Abraham was distressed. Ishmael was his son too. But the Lord told him, "Do as Sarah says, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. But I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring." And so, once again, Hagar was cast out. With a skin of water and a piece of bread, she and Ishmael wandered into the wilderness of Beersheba. The sun blazed overhead, merciless. When the water was gone, and the boy grew faint, Hagar placed him under a shrub and walked a bowshot away. She could not bear to watch him die. She lifted her voice and wept. And God heard. An angel of the Lord called to her from heaven, "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes. She saw a well of water. She filled her skin and gave the boy a drink. Ishmael survived. He thrived. He grew up in the wilderness and became an archer. Hagar found him a wife from Egypt, and he became the father of 12 princes. His descendants spread across the desert, fierce and free. Though their path would diverge from Isaac's, they too carried the echo of a promise. And Hagar, once a nameless servant, once a castaway, became the matriarch of nations. Her story was written not in comfort but in struggle, not in favor but in faith. She was the first to name God El Roi, the God who sees me. And because of her, every forgotten soul, every cast-out wanderer, could know they are seen, they are heard. Hagar's name may have been whispered in the shadows, but her story was thunderous. Her life was a testament that even in the margins, God moves. Even in the wilderness, there is a well. And even in sorrow, there is promise. She is Hagar, mother of nations, and her legacy lives on. El Roi still sees. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful Bible stories. Until next time, remain blessed.